Why don't we open? So the usual speech pursuant to General Laws, Chapter 30A, Section 20B, following the declaration of state of emergency in the Commonwealth arising from the COVID-19 pandemic, the committee will meet virtually utilizing Zoom technology. All votes will be taken by a roll call vote. So we'll open with a roll call. Gina Stino. You're muted. All right, I'm going to take it as you're here. Mike Barclay.
Present.
Fran Collins. I don't see him. Patrick Kennedy. I don't see him. Mark Maggi.
Present.
Ellen Marr.
Present.
Mary McGoldrick.
Present.
Meg Wheeler.
Present.
And Rob Hillman. I too am present. I think the first order of business is to welcome Ellen, our newest member. I'm sure if all of you haven't heard, Adam Amen moved and no longer residing in town, could no longer be on our committee, which is a shame. And I think at the end of the meeting, I think it would be a nice gesture to acknowledge the people whose service we've had who moved on for one reason or another. But for now, let's welcome Ellen. Do you want to give everybody 20 seconds or so of your background for those who don't know you?
Sure. Thank you all. I'm looking forward to being on, working on this committee with all of you. I most recently had 2 terms on the Cohasset School Committee, ending in June of 2021. On that, I served on budget and finance, school security, superintendent eval, superintendent search, a bunch of subcommittees. I work in the U.S. Customs brokerage and international freight forwarding business. Everybody knows it as supply chain these days. America's 2 favorite words. And I've been almost a lifelong resident of Cohasset. Moved here in 1966 when I was 4 years old. I live in the house I grew up in. I went through Cohasset Public Schools, as did my 4 siblings, as did my husband and his 4 siblings, and our 2 kids graduated. So we have a long history here in town, and I love being involved and contributing whatever it is I can.
Well, we appreciate it. Thanks for joining us. Once again, we're a full committee, which isn't something we've always been in my 4.5 years on. So I'm very happy to have not just a full committee, but a really good committee. So our first, over the summer, we looked at a variety of things to do to be useful and get off to a good start in the fall. For a variety of reasons, things weren't able to get together for a meeting earlier in the summer. So we're sort of at the last possible minute before most people's notion of summer has passed. But there were a number of things that are of immediate and or more long-term interest for our charge of advising town meetings on matters that are going to come before it, particularly matters concerning town finances. And some of what we ought to talk about tonight, what's on the agenda, projects what we will want to work on between now and the special town meeting. But as we discussed in the spring, I think as a committee, we want to get away from simply being reactive to the next town meeting that's in front of us and get off that treadmill a little bit and start to think about longer term trends. And there's a couple of things on the agenda tonight that address those. So the first agenda item is a discussion of the School Facilities Committee and a statement of interest submitted by the school department to the Massachusetts School Building Authority. I think this is as long-term thinking as our committee could be asked to do, because this could be the biggest, or at least the most expensive building project in the 251-year history of the town. So that's important. I see Mary's hands up. Mary?
Just a point of operation here this evening. As Patrick is walking around, I'm guessing he's not taking minutes. Mike, did he designate you?
I
Dan,
was, I was planning to go back to the recording. I've been on the meeting as soon as they allowed me in. The
okay,
link I originally got was wrong, and then the updated agenda was sent to the wrong email address. And I am downtown Boston, but trying to get home. So,
okay.
but yeah,
Thank you.
if someone can take notes as a backstop, that'd be great. But I plan to be on the entire meeting.
Thanks, Mary. I just was going to assume that Patrick's memory was all that, but, and it is, but, backstop is good. So thanks, Patrick. We appreciate
Okay,
it.
thanks.
So as I said, we had scheduled discussion of the MSBA issue back in the spring, but that did not happen. Jason Earls is with us. I'll introduce him in a second. You had been provided with some links and some documents which came out to maybe 300 pages of material. So sorry. But my view, having put this down on our agenda for about 40 minutes, clearly we're not going to be able to dig very deeply into the SOI at this meeting, but I thought a brief overview and some preliminary questions, and then we as a committee can decide how we want to monitor the development of the SOI and the ensuing project. So that said, Jason, who chairs the school facilities committee, which has been meeting for just over a year, has joined us. They have spoken with lots of consultants. All of their meetings are available online. I've actually watched most of them. And they've generated a document that's gone to the MSBA. Jason, if you could maybe summarize, the different members of the committee will have different interests, and they'll have an opportunity. Give everybody an opportunity to ask questions. But I think probably a useful starting point would be, where are we right now? The SOI has been filed with the MSBA. What does that mean, and what happens next? And then I'll let the committee kind of move the conversation where the committee wants it to go.
Yeah, not a problem. Good evening, everyone. I'm Jason. I'm the chair for the school facilities committee. We were charged by the select board and the school committee to take a look at all our schools. It's not just the middle high school. So we did get a firm in. They produced a study for us, and it was determined that the high school and middle school was the one that we needed to focus on, that needed the most work, repair, replacement, so be it. So we submitted a statement of interest to the Massachusetts School Building Authority. We did that in the end of April, and currently it is under review by them. They have, as of 2 days ago, reached out to us and are scheduling what they call a senior study visit. So they will be down at the Cohasset Middle School, and that'll be on September 28th at 9 o'clock. I will be present along with other members of the town community. That's actually being run through Dr. Sullivan, principal. He's sending out invites and letting everybody know when that is. The purpose of that is for them to get their own eyes on it, ask a bunch of questions that are in our SOI, see the building itself. So that's the current state that it's at. Talking with other members of my committee and doing backdoor channeling myself. A final decision one way or another for us will be sometime in either December or January, whether or not we get accepted into the program.
And can you tell us what being accepted into the program, what's the program and what does being accepted into it mean?
Sure. The program is basically we apply for it and they contribute X amount of dollars for the overall project. It's a percentage based on how old the building is, how much repair it is, the overall median income, I believe, of the community, and a couple other factors. So they would be contributing some money towards this project.
Well, I mean, the crux of the comment of your comments for our committee is some percentage carries an awful lot of baggage.
Yes, it
so
does.
We're gonna have to dig into that a bit. Mike?
Well, let me just, before
go
I
ahead.
getting into questions, we are at the earliest stage of this. Has been no discussion about designs of any buildings. There has been no discussion about dollar amounts because it is all unknown. It's up to basically the MSBA to tell us whether they think we should renovate or whether we should have a new building. And that kind of puts us in the direction that we need to go. But this is the first step we needed to take to get funding from the state of Massachusetts. Now, with that said, the town decides, hey, let's go in on our own. That's a whole nother ball of wax, but we haven't even gone down that road yet.
Oh, Mike?
Yeah, hey, Jason, thanks for your time. So I don't know how much things have changed. I was actually very heavily involved in the East School project in Hingham, which was the first program under the new MSBA where they give you a percentage and they actually give you the money up front. One of the things that was tricky about the process back then was there was a certain amount of time between when they approved the project and you had to have it voted by the town. And I knew it created just a kind of a tricky timeline in related to what they approved and then getting the town and the debt exclusions and everything lined up. Is that still the case now where, if it's a December or January final decision by them, is our regular town meeting going to be, will that fit into their timeline of getting the town to approve the project, with their funding?
Yes, there's actually, I don't know if you're aware, there's actually 8 steps. There's the step we're in right now, which is the eligibility period. Then there's the second step, which is formulating a team. That's the project team, OM, all that stuff. Then they require their own feasibility study. But since we did our own, they kind of piggyback on that. Then there's step 4, which is schematic design. Then there's step 5, which is funding the project. Step 6, detailed design. Step 7 is construction, and step 8 is completing the project. So from the time of entering to getting funding, there's 2, 3, 4, there's like 4 or 5 other steps. So the time frame all depends on when we get in and how fast we, as a community, move to get the OM, to get the architect, to get the design. So it's not really them dictating to us the timeline. It's more of, hey, we're doing this and we got to keep them informed every step of the way.
So I guess it's different then, because I know back then part of the way they looked at it was they wanted, I guess they wanted some confidence that there was, the community was fully behind the project. And so there was a little bit of a give and take between the town and the MSBA in that. It was a little bit of a dance. And so.
Yes, because they actually added a new step for this. In order for us to submit a statement of interest, it had to be voted on and approved by our select board and by the school committee. So we had to get those votes before we could even send it to them, before they would even look at it. So that kind of tells them, all right, so this community may be interested in doing this. So let's see what this is all about.
Okay, thanks.
I mean, I have the sense, I saw the meetings at which those votes were taken, and I think there's a a difference between, I know the MSBA has prescribed votes that need to be taken by prescribed boards. But, you know, I have, you know, some knowledge, not exhaustive of how the MSBA approaches projects. And I think that their slogan, I think this has been told to you by your own consultants, that they back winners. And
Mhm.
winners
Yep.
are projects that are highly likely to get funding by communities. And we'll get to this because I'm gonna let other people ask questions, but I just wanted to footnote this. I'm not sure that getting 2 formula votes from 2 boards is evidence of, you know, community buy-in. There's a lot more work to do.
Yep.
And definition to be given. And this seems to me to have moved very quickly from to the point of an SOI without consulting a lot of other potential constituents. So we'll talk about that in a bit. Ellen, did I see your hand? Ellen?
I was
Did
just going to comment, and I don't want to jump ahead of Jason's, you know, presentation. I did a lot of study of the MSBA when I was on the school committee, because when we first started talking about this, I was still involved. And in fact, we got the school facilities committee rejuvenated. It's a 3-year process from the date the grant is awarded to the ribbon cutting. So we have, you know, 3 years to think about it. And the MSBA reimbursement rate really does vary according, you know, to what Jason said, from anywhere. Again, it depends upon the socioeconomic conditions of your community. Like East Elementary and Hingham got 40% reimbursement from MSBA. Duxbury High School got 45%. Carver Elementary got 59%. So it really does depend on a lot of factors. So Jason, I assume the statement of interest. So I do have a question. It says Cohasset Middle High. Now, several years ago, we administratively and structurally within the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education separated the middle school. So are we asking for 2 projects or 1 project?
1 project. What has recently been developed by MSBA is a formula for a joint middle high school. In previous years, they did not have that distinction. They do now.
Okay. I mean, our campus and our buildings are conjoined, but they are separate entities as far as DESE is concerned.
As far as MSBA is concerned, it is 1 building, 1 school.
Okay.
Ellen, I just want to get some clarity on the timeline. Ellen, you had said from approval to ribbon cutting is 3 years.
3 to 5.
I think,
That's
yeah, it's construction,
updated.
so, yeah, but the ribbon cutting part, I mean, the part that's going to be critical or crucial, maybe is the right word, is getting to the point where funding is placed before the town with a plan that's being proposed. And I'm interested, for the purposes of our committee, in the steps that get us there. So your committee was charged, it drafted, and the school department submitted the SOI. You had said that the MSBA is going to do their investigation, and at some point, it sounded like you project by year end, is going to come back with, if you're either accepted into the program, the town is either accepted into the program or it is not. So let's assume it is, because if it's not, obviously, it's a very different conversation. You had also said, I just want to make sure I'm understanding what you're saying, and the committee is too, maybe they're all way ahead of me, but when they accept a proposal or a statement of interest into the program, at what point does MSBA decide, well, we'll back a major renovation, less than major renovation, or a tear down and rebuild? And because I read as much of the SOA as I could today, and it sounds as if Cohasset is asking for essentially both. Obviously one or the other, but it would be adverse to both. And we'll have a conversation if it comes to a proposal that's going to be involved, that's going to involve tearing down that building and building another one. We're not going to get that done in 40 minutes tonight, I don't think. But what the question I had is just that is who makes the decision what the scope of the MSBA's approved project might be and when?
The MSBA, they're gonna tell us whether they think we can remodel it or they think it should be, we should have a new building.
And at what point do they come across with the percentage of, or do they wait until there are some real numbers before they talk about the percentage that they'll pay?
They need real numbers.
Okay, so, and correct, trust me, I'm just trying to follow the logic, so correct me if I'm wrong. December, January, February, March, MSBA comes back and says, you're accepted in the program for a renovation, just hypothetically. Does that triggers work by the town to tell MSBA what kind of a renovation we would want? Is that the next step?
If they say renovation, then we need to put our project team together. PM, OM, whatever the town decides. And then we would need to select we're actually told by MSBA which architect firm to use, because they don't want one firm overloaded with too much work. So there'll be a list of, I think, about like 4 that you could select. We can say which ones we want, and then they'll come back and tell us you have to use this one. And then that starts the process of getting the design, getting the costs, and everything along those lines. But until we have plans, I couldn't even.
So
Comfortable
at
get.
some point, if the MSBA says, yes, you're accepted in the program for a major renovation, that triggers all of that work. And what has your committee done, if anything, to project the costs that just being accepted into the program will generate and how that's going to get paid for?
We haven't come up with any costs. We're waiting to see whether we get accepted or not. I can't really say what a cost of a architect will be. I could ask the firm that did helped us with our SOI, but
You used Vertex, right?
Hmm?
You used Vertex? Was
No,
it John
AI3.
Lemieux? Oh, AI3. Okay.
AI3.
I thought I saw John Lemieux talking to your.
Yeah, he
committee.
helped kick off the search for the firms, and then
Oh, okay.
he passed it over.
All right. I misunderstood. I am familiar with John. I think very highly of him. So
Yeah, I would.
giving
Yeah,
advice.
he helped us tremendously.
Right, but it was, I'm sorry, the 200-page document had, what is it, AI3?
AI3, yes.
AI3, their logo right on the cover. Maybe that should have been a clue. But so did the committee look at the costs associated with similar projects of recent vintage in similar towns?
We did. I'd have to trying to remember what the town was, because there's really only one town that was similar to us that did something, but they did it like 5 years ago, I believe. I'm thinking Concord, but that doesn't sound right to me. I'd have to get the name of that. But yes, we did look at, and a bunch of members did go to that school as well, because it was one of the towns that were kind of similar to Cohasset. I mean, there's tons of schools that have been built, but they're not us. I mean, I personally worked on it.
Well, 5 years ago, may as well have been building the Great Pyramid.
Exactly. So
Nothing
nothing that has been built recently that has our, I guess you could say, demographic, I guess, similar to Cohasset. There's nothing really that's been built with our town size and our uniqueness, I guess you could say.
So I have a couple more questions, but I don't want to monopolize the conversation. Does anybody on the committee got anything they want to jump in on? I realize that everybody got a lot of late homework. Mary McGoldrick.
Yes, just a quick question regarding, and Mike, you may have some idea about this as well as Ellen too. But Jason, is there a big differential in the percentage that's reimbursed as in a renovation as opposed to a rebuild?
It's a percentage of the overall project. It's not a percentage based on whether you do a renovation.
Okay, so that's not a determining factor at all. Okay.
Yeah, Mary, there's a lot of, I mean, there's also like green credits built into it and things like that. The middle school in Hingham got a higher percentage from the MSBA than East School did because they built in some green credits and things like that. And so, yeah, there's sort of a base level reimbursement, and then there's opportunity to add to that based on, I don't know, a la carte things that you can add to the project, so to speak.
Anyone else? I have a question that kind of jumped off the front page of the SOI. There's 8 factors that appear to be part of the form. And I assume they're the SOI priorities that are set by the MSBA. And check marks that, I mean, fortunately, we did not check off prevention of the loss of accreditation, for example, as one of our priorities. That would have been a little alarming. But the checkbox for elimination of existing severe overcrowding. I was curious about what census factors the committee took into account to reach that conclusion. Like, what's the 5-year growth or lack of growth in our student body? Most importantly, what's the projection for the next 5 or 10 years?
See if I have it. It's actually a formula by MSBA, and they project out based on a certain percentage. I believe it went all the way to 2030. I'm just trying to see if I have it here real quick. But yes, that was taken into consideration.
Do you happen to know, because the last 5 years up till now is objective. Have we, I mean, if we're telling them that we have existing severe overcrowding, I'm curious whether, we've had a 10, 20, 25% increase in students in that building.
Well, it's a twofold thing. It's not actual people itself. It's also the square footage per student of what we have in that building versus what the MSBA considers a baseline for that student. So if you look at that study, you're going to see a lot of the rooms are red because the square.
Yeah, there are a lot of them are about 100. They're what, about 18% under the DESI, or is it DESI or MSBA?
No, not DESI. DESI has nothing to.
Okay, so it's an MSBA
Formulas from
standard
MSBA's.
for what they would fund in a new building. So
Correct.
DESI isn't going to close down one of our schools because the classrooms are 18% undersized to
Correct.
the idea. Okay, just checking. And if it's per student, presumably, if our census is decreasing, our square foot per student would be getting bigger, wouldn't it?
Yes, but there's a whole. I can find it. I don't know where I housed it. It might be in one of my emails. I'll forward it to the entire committee after this. But it's a formula that was out of our hands because I questioned the same thing on how they got some of the percentages, because some of them they went up like 5%, another one went up one year like 8%, and I'm just like looking at the numbers. But it's a formula. They take what our student enrollment is now. They do based off of census. They have this whole thing, and then it projects out the next 8 years.
And any other questions in the committee? I'm sort of mindful of the fact that I'm running on here. Well, I'll run on just a little bit more. Mary, go ahead.
That jumped out as me as well. As I mean, we spent a lot of time last year going through the school budget certainly and working with the superintendent on that, because while administration has increased exponentially, the student population has not necessarily. And the way I was reading it, and correct me if I'm wrong, it seems like the MSBA, how they would have looked at the appropriate amount of square footage per student 20 years ago is different than they look at it today. Is that the right gist?
That's correct.
Okay, so it doesn't, it's interesting though, and can be a little misleading depending on how much you read into it, that first statement. In Rob's absence, Jean,
No, I'm back. I'm having some bandwidth issues, and
Really
I
like the
also
picture of Pat's ear too.
I'll be better in a minute. I just I'm sorry. Jean, your hand was up.
Yes. Jason, do you have a total enrollment number for right now? I know that the NESDEC numbers aren't out yet, but I don't even know if it's in this SOI because I got it so late. I work full time. I couldn't look at it. I'm just wondering if you have the bottom line on the enrollment, because the last one I saw was 1,500 students, was 1,490.
I believe it was somewhere around there. Again, it's all on that. If I could find the stinking thing.
I went to open it after work and saw that it was 40 pages and knew I couldn't give it enough time. So I figured I could ask questions tonight.
Yeah, sorry for the lateness on getting everything, but between the schools getting ready for school and me down with COVID, I wasn't really checking.
Well, that's not a fun thing.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm
it's
so
not.
sorry to drag you out for this, but we appreciate it.
No.
So I suppose we can get that number.
Yeah,
some point
worst
before
case scenario, I'll just send an email to Dr. Sullivan and he can forward it to everybody because I know
Okay, is it in this report? Because I'm happy to read through. I just didn't have time to do it.
I don't think we put our numbers in there.
Okay, all right.
It might have been an attachment that we sent. Because I know that this was very unfriendly system to populate. It's not like we could have just drafted this up and sent it to them. It's copying and pasting and formatting, and it took a very, very long time to do.
Yeah, that's why we're looking at a draft, is that the actual version was populated into an online program and not
Yeah.
all the words fit. So I have Ellen and then Mike. Ellen?
Just going to answer Jean's question. In the school budget presented for FY23, the enrollment was projected at 1,439 students against FY22 of 1,411. And as point of comparison from FY19, so 4 years ago, was 1,564. So we're down about 130 students from FY19.
Thanks, Ellen.
And Mike.
Yeah, Jason, just, I guess, just guesstimate as best as you can. So if we get approval in January, February for, to move forward with this, what do you think the timing would be? We'd have to have town meeting approved by 2/3 vote for a override and then go to the poll to vote for that. What would the timing be around that vote and the town needing to rally behind that type of action?
Well, the first step would be to have the town rally around having a OM and getting a designer on board, because I can't have the town rally around a building I don't know what the price is. So that's going to be the first step.
Yep, I understand that, which if you get approval in January, do you then, is the late April town meeting, again, I guess, because we are operating on the MSBA timeline to a certain extent, right? So, as we try to map this out and think about, the different points where the town's going to need to demonstrate to the MSBA that there's support behind this. And then just thinking about overall, needs for the town and when we might be thinking about a debt exclusion. Again, not trying to pin you down to a specific.
If I could take out my crystal ball and had to guess when we would go to, say, a town meeting with the overall construction numbers and all that stuff, either the end of 2023 or 2024.
Okay. Fair enough.
And-
Thank you.
And wouldn't that require, Mike, and I'm sorry if I missed something, but it seems to me that somewhere along the line, town meetings have to provide interim money to fund all this.
For design, yeah, for
Like-
design.
Yeah, like every other building we build.
Yeah,
So,
no, absolutely. Yeah, you'll have to approve the study itself and then, and now I know again, in the case of Hingham, they just went with a previous design, the MSBA, basically for the middle school, they went with the Whitman Hanson High School design. And so sometimes the MSBA will just overlay a previous project design. Not saying this is apples to apples, but sometimes they'll do that. But yes, you're right. Fund the study, and there'll be different funding points before we get to that actual debt exclusion. And yeah, the Hingham Middle School almost didn't happen because on the floor of town meeting, the vote for the design money almost didn't pass, and it almost got torpedoed right there. So that the support has to be built early on for this project to be successful.
and there's an argument that, and this is an argument will come up later on our agenda, is that may be the right time for projects to get the hard look rather than $1 million in. But I think it's good to establish a timeline for this project. I'm curious, out of whose budget did the money for these consultants come? Was this built into a school
It came
department budget?
from Chris Senior. He had some money. I don't know if it was free cash or where it came from.
Okay.
But-
Doesn't matter. I mean, it was, appropriate, I think, for what it's worth. All right, well, we are at, sort of the point on our agenda where I anticipated wrapping up this discussion. I just want to make sure that nobody had any additional questions. I think this is either a half an hour discussion or a 5-hour discussion. I don't think there's any middle ground. And Jason, I wanted to make clear that as it was described to me when I joined the advisory committee by the town moderator, the town manager, and senior members of the committee, is that the function of this committee is to ask the hard questions. And, so that's what we do. So it's, don't interpret this as a lack of support or a problem or something else. If we don't ask the questions that might come up on the floor of the town meeting, we're not doing our job. So that's, this isn't the least bit hostile. And we really, I appreciate your coming in. I really appreciate you're doing so with COVID. So hope you get better. I see Mary's hand.
Yeah, I just wanted to say, Jason, I was involved with the renovation project 20 years ago. And I know Rob was in town then as well and involved with the town hall project. And thank you. You're not in an easy spot. So we appreciate your time. And
I got an uphill. I know I have an uphill battle. So
Thank you.
I went in knowing that, so it's all good.
Okay, well then, with all that said, Jason, please take the rest of the night off.
Thank you, everyone. Good,
With our
good
best
meeting you.
wishes. And
I'm going to bed. Good night.
please do. Bye-bye. All right, we are 3 minutes ahead of schedule. So I think we can start our discussion of the next budget, the next item. I put it on the agenda as discussion of school department budget process and school department subcommittee. And let me explain what I meant by that and why it's there, and then we can talk about it. Obviously, the largest portion of the operating budget every year is the school department. It's a very complicated budget. It involves, it's overwhelmingly labor cost, but there's a ton of other curriculum and capital and supplies and I think working with the school committee and the town to properly forecast that budget and so that everybody knows what constraints are on all the budgets from revenue projections is one of the most important things we can do. And I think last year we made a material contribution to coming to town meeting with a budget that got it done. I hate using the term town side, school side, because I know it's used, but it doesn't express the right idea. It's all one town, it's all one budget. But it had been suggested, since we have 3 alumni of the school committee, that we could ask them if they are interested in forming a subcommittee of this committee to point with the school committee and school department through the budget process and other matters as is appropriate for us within our charge. So what does anybody think about that? Jean?
If it's a subcommittee of this committee, then we have to have posted meetings.
I understand that.
If it's liaisons, and we can work in concert and not have to post. I think that makes more sense, because trying to tie down, everybody, all the moving people is sometimes difficult.
Okay. Chris, or well, let's keep it within the
Mary.
committee first.
Yeah, Mary.
Mary, interested in what you have?
I actually like the idea of having it as a subcommittee of the whole, and just primarily because I think it puts a little more gravitas underneath it. I mean, the next couple of years, looking at what is coming up for them, whether it's a renovated building or a new building, they've just signed a new contract. Employee count is rising. There's a lot going on. So personally, that would be my preference. I'm curious to hear what Ellen says. All that said, I think Jean and I worked quite well. I mean, Patrick and Susan last year were terrific. They were available. That wasn't an issue. But I would personally like to see a subcommittee.
Ellen, it's your first meeting and you've just been volunteered for something. So I suppose we should ask if you'd like to address it.
No, that's okay, because Rob, you and I had discussed it, and I find that the formality of a subcommittee, to Mary's point, kind of gives us some weight and some skin in the game, so to speak, to have structured meetings with Pat and Susan in the process, and or the school committee subcommittee, their finance and facility subcommittee. I'm not sure how much of budget conversations go on in that, but I think it would be worthwhile, where we're trying to position advisory in a more collaborative position, to say, hey, we're doing this, and to assist and help and move forward.
I see the value in having it a formal body that could meet, with the school committee's formal bodies rather than, but it's really, it's up to the three of you. Jean, have they convinced you? Or you?
I'm not, it was just a comment.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Then,
it was just a comment.
does anyone?
And I'm just concerned if meetings during the day, I cannot attend them. But maybe we could work something out where we could meet between work hours and school committee meetings. Certainly the superintendent and the business manager are there.
Yeah.
Prior to school committee meetings. I don't know, we can see how it works.
Yeah, if it's not working, we can try it, we can fix it somehow.
Yeah, I'm not available during the workday either, from 6 AM to 6 PM. You know, I can jump on a Zoom call, but I can't physically be in the business office at the administrative building, you know,
Mhm.
during the workday. The other thing, just full disclosure, my oldest son is a middle school math teacher at Cohasset. And I don't want to have any appearance of a conflict or how do I say this? I'm just concerned about it. I'm just concerned that any input on my end might trickle down. I know that's, you know, unsubstantiated, but his career is more important than my volunteer work. I just have to be honest with you guys.
I suppose we could get an opinion on a conflict. I don't really see one. And you know, we're an advisory committee. We make no
Right,
actual decisions. You know, you have no hiring and firing,
right,
you know, authority over people who hire and fire him, other than as a member of town meeting. So, or a member of, you know, a citizen who can
Right.
attend town meeting.
right.
I sat on the board of a company that at many removes from me employed both of my sons. And I would have liked to have been able to abuse them, but I couldn't. And but I'm sure that can be fixed. I mean, I don't think there's anything to fix, but I'll talk to Chris and we'll see if it needs an opinion. But like I said, if you were on the school committee, might be a very different thing, but it's right in the name. We're an advisory
Okay.
committee.
I just wanted to put it out there.
No, it's always better to, always. Thank you. So does any of the rest of us whose opinions don't really matter as much as the three of them have an opinion that they'd like, or a point or an idea? Hearing none, perhaps a motion to form a school budget subcommittee of the advisory committee to consist of Gina Stino, Mary McGoldrick, and, well, alphabetically, Gina Stino, Ellen Marr, and Mary McGoldrick. Somebody want to move that?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Okay, all in favor? We've got to do this by voice vote again. I do not think the members need to abstain. So, Gina Stino,
Aye.
Mike Barclay,
Aye.
Fran Collins is not with us this evening. Patrick Kennedy,
Aye.
Mark Maggi,
Aye.
Ellen Marr,
Aye.
Mary McGoldrick,
Aye.
Ellen Wheeler.
Meg Wheeler?
Meg Wheeler?
What did I say?
Ellen.
My mother's middle name, but
Meg.
Didn't
I
get
do see
your
you all the
nap
time.
today.
I'm endlessly sorry.
you really don't remember my name, Rob? Really?
Ms. Wheeler, Member Wheeler, the
Aye.
Honorable Meg Wheeler,
Aye.
and Rob Hillman is an aye. So be it. Okay, good. We'll moving on to the update on the capital planning group and port and field study. Sorry about the barking. My dog never barks. I was barking at something tonight, so naturally, because I have a public meeting. The capital planning group, as many of you may know, it's still being formed and potentially charged with responsibilities relating to thinking about long-term capital planning for the town, which is an exercise in both projecting town revenue, town operating expense, and capital requirements over a longer period of time than we have heretofore. I know this has been something that's been encouraged since John Chapman was the chair and I joined the committee, and I think it had been a long-standing a desire there. I know capital budget is interested in the same exercise and kind of what the best practices are for capturing those numbers and then incorporating them into the decision-making process for example, massive capital projects. So far, that group has met twice. The representatives from advisory are me and Mike. The first two meetings were really formative and talking about how to talk about that issue. We'll be meeting again in early September. I don't think there's that much more to say about it other than it exists, and best case at the end of a process, there's better analytics for in place when a conversation about a capital project occurs or multiple capital projects, how to address them with real or as close to real numbers as can be generated. Mike, does that capture your notion of what that group is up to?
Yeah, I mean, I think the first meeting is going to be the next meeting will be the 12th of September, I believe. And yeah, I mean, just to start, it's sort of the basics of cash flow accounting. What are the sources of cash? What are the uses of cash? And to try to get that all, in one place to try to begin to understand what can and, can be done over time.
Gene?
And who's in that group besides you two?
Oh, yeah, it's not just a committee of us. The initial invitation, it hasn't been charged yet. It's not yet a committee as such, but the concept that bubbled up from the select board was 2 members from select board, advisory, capital budget, representatives from the school committee, anybody who spends a lot of money, water, sewer, and I'm probably offending somebody by forgetting them, but that was essentially it, that it would be
Water.
yeah, I said water and sewer. If I didn't say it out loud, I meant to. And the idea being that there wouldn't be a quorum of any one committee on this committee. And in fact, Mike and I won't be able to be members because as members of the advisory committee, we are barred from being voting members of any other committee of town, but we can be liaisons to the committee and engage at least in the conversation. But that's that, and I think was some discussion of potentially a member or 2 at large, and staff support is going to be an issue. I actually do not know if the select board approved the hiring of a finance director last night or not. I didn't see the meeting. Hopefully they did, because that's going to be a key player in helping to pull numbers together and projections. Although we still have the benefit of Don Pyatt, who continues to consult for the town and who had really done a lot of this sort of work that exists, is reliable, and we can build on. And also there's staff in the room. Go ahead, Mary.
Excuse me for interrupting. I don't know if you saw, but Michael Dick is in the audience and he raised his hand, so he might be able to add some information.
Okay, as a rule, I watch meetings of other committees who kind of promote people out of the audience all the time. And I will resign this committee if we ever start that, because it makes meetings endless. But given the nature of Mike's participation, which is really essentially to chair this committee, and the work he's put into it, I would be happy for him to sharpen my explanation a little bit. So if we could promote Mike to give us some input, I'd be happy to hear him. Am I supposed to do something?
I don't know. Let's see. You and I are both hosts,
Okay.
but I don't.
I've got There he is. He's just
Yeah.
appeared as a panelist.
Yep.
He's just appeared as a map. He's just appeared as a person. Good evening, Mike. Except
mute.
we can't hear you.
Can you hear me?
No, we could for a second there. Try again.
Hi, it's Mike. It's Mike.
It's really
I can hear-
faint, Mike. We can hear you, but it's faint.
Just speak up and we'll try and hang on.
Happy to. Yes, the finance director was hired last night. And what you described, Rob, is correct in terms of the makeup. There was a charge that the select board implemented last week. And we can certainly send that, or we'll send that around to the committee, to the working group, our working group. And Rob and Mike, if you choose to send it on to advisory, and I hope you do, you'll be able to see the charge. So that's really all I wanted to add. And
Thanks.
we're up and running, and off we go. And thank you for promoting me.
Oh, not at all. I should say that, the charge, as I understood it, was for review and comment to let the group sharpen it up a bit if need be. And then in any event, there will be a charge and there will be members. And once those things exist, then there are quorum requirements and things like that. But we'll manage all that. So Mike, I'll see you on the 12th and we'll try and get our homework done. So
Thank you.
thanks. Who's ever keeping notes should note that Fran Collins has joined us. Good evening, Fran. We're still on time on the agenda, I think. 8 o'clock. Oh, right. So the other item was on for an update for the court and field study. And I think many of you are aware that there was a court and field study. I think, in fact, this advisory committee voted to fund that at the town meeting -1 or 2. It came back, the select board had put it on an agenda back a few months ago, but its status is unclear. If it were fully implemented, it would be like $4 million for the courts and fields. So obviously it's sort of the menu. And I think of it as a menu in a restaurant, in a diner with a very big menu, and the town will pick different projects off and prioritize it. I don't know that it's actually been reviewed by the rec board yet. So, or the recreation commission. So I don't think there's much for us to do there. And I've kind of informally confirmed that with members of the select board. But this is an example of the kind of project or set of projects that both this committee and this capital budget, capital or finance projection committee should be looking at early and often. Part of what's come up, and Mike, you weren't able to be there. I think this is on YouTube someplace with, I look at the meetings that are up on the various websites, and there are often as many as 3 people have watched the tapes. But if you choose to join those 3 people, part of the conversation was with major projects. There's a phenomenon of mission creep. A committee gets appointed, committee looks at studies the problem, the committee determines responses to the problem. Then the committee is charged with moving forward. And all of a sudden someone's coming to town meeting looking for plans for a multi-million-dollar project. Not necessarily a bad thing, but nowhere along that process does anybody ask some fundamental questions about how does this fit into a larger capital plan, A, B, what alternatives are there, C, kind of how does it fit against other capital priorities or budget priorities. And that's what that group is looking to do And I think probably the court study, and for that matter, the school project needs that sort of discipline early on to be able to look at a 10-year budget projection and say, this is what it's going to take. You know, can it fit in the budget? If not, how does it get financed? If so, what does that cost? And if so, what can't you do? Because you devoted dollars to that. So, so that's a lot of talking by me. But we should know it's out there. And I think before it takes on a life of its own, we should get involved in it taking on a life, so that it doesn't just sort of, grow in the corner of the yard. And these are important things. I'm not suggesting for a minute that, some of these courts and fields and recreation opportunities aren't a really good idea. It's just they need to be paid attention to. That's my view. Does anybody else want to? Jean, go ahead.
Members, I have to say that I've been approached by a few neighbors who want to know why the heck nothing is being done, because they're of the opinion that they voted to carry it forward at town meeting and, show us the money and put in the work. So I think, to your point, Rob, watching this and making sure that these things get carried out is a good thing. I mean, we watched for years the capital budget process and the never-ending list of projects that needed to be done and that had monies allocated. Some money was spent, there was money left over from projects. What happens to that? So it's a big conversation.
It is. And I mean, as to the folks who ask questions about the money that was allocated by town meeting, it was allocated for a study. The study was done. They got the money was allocated, it was spent. So, now it tees up a bunch of additional discussions.
Right.
Mary?
I was just going to note that it's pretty important that this is done hand in hand with whatever the decision regarding the middle high school renovation or reconstruction is, because it's I think there was some conversation that either Milliken or Alumni Field, it would end up being a staging area for one thing or another. And so it's just, there's not anything that's not interconnected here, and not just by if dollars go here, they can't go there. So even more reasons to stay on top of that.
Yeah. I mean, one thing that is not happening is people aren't making any more land in Cohasset. And the study, I mean, is very thorough as far as I could tell. I mean, they looked at, every place you could play a game of hopscotch. I think they looked at for potential recreational use, but after rec weighs in, perhaps we could have a meeting with them and other interested people and discuss sort of the future of that. In part, Jean, what you say is to keep it moving along. And if we're not going to build everything, but if we're going to build 62% of what's on the list, it's, finance it and get at it, or know the good reasons why it can't move as swiftly as people might like.
People have a long memory of the sidewalk project in the village, and it's not a nice conversation when it comes up.
I too have those memories.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the field and court non-update, but it's worth keeping an eye on. So that brings us to the reserve fund request. So I can introduce Chris and Michelle, and I believe I sent materials. It has to do with, I guess the right word would be decommissioning the elevator in town hall. And I'll let Chris and Michelle take it from there.
Can I just ask one question before we move on? There were 2 copies of the elevator projects. They're both dated the same, so I'm a little confused. They were in the same email, I believe.
Was it an email from me?
Yeah.
That probably explains a lot. It probably just attached the same document twice.
Okay. All right. I wasn't sure. It didn't say revised on either one of them, so.
No. I think
I'm gonna
probably.
run away.
Probably Occam's razor gets us right to the culprit there. So,
Okay.
but Michelle will square us away. Fran?
Yeah, before we get too far into it, I read that and I was concerned that if we are going to, if it looks like we're going to be able to go ahead and rebuild the town hall as it is, wouldn't this all be better to be put into that buildings that tear things apart all at once rather than have things torn apart twice?
I think that's a big part of what we're about to hear.
Okay,
So, and I think there is, the teaser is, I think there's an environmental angle here, which, but go ahead, Michelle and or Chris.
Sure. So back in July, we had Kone come out and service our elevators. They realized that during servicing the elevators that it wasn't holding the oil as it should. So what we did is we shut down the elevator, we stopped it from use. They gave us a proposal to come fix the elevator fully, which would be some of the work you saw in this proposal with additional work in another proposal. And what the work is it's replacing the hydraulics. But to Fran's point, we're in the middle of studying a new town hall building. And if in fact we do move forward with the town hall building and it does get passed, any work that we do to this elevator will likely be for naught because we are going to be replacing it. New technology suggests that you don't use hydraulics any longer the way that this elevator operates. So there's been some hesitancy on our part regarding fixing the elevator. As of late, what we found out is the oil may have penetrated the pan and therefore it caused some need for environmental remediation. And whether or not we replace the elevator or repair the elevator, if this environmental hazard is in the ground, we're going to have to address it either when we build a new building or now. So it's suggested that we at least find out what we're up against, if anything, now, and just mitigate the problem, and then hold off on actually fixing the elevator until we have a vote of the community for a new town hall.
Okay. I see hands. I see Mike and Mark in that order. Mike?
Hey, Michelle, thanks. So just out of curiosity with the oil leaking into the ground, I mean, I guess my concern / question is how long this has been going on, and in simply trying to remediate it now, will we even be able to get the full scope of how bad it potentially could be versus, you know, if we're starting a whole new project where there will be far more work done and we'll have a better idea of just how much that is, depending if there's ledge underneath there. Again, just it's always hard to really understand how much has happened in these types of situations. And I guess it sounds like, I don't know why the company didn't spot this beforehand. I don't want to play Monday morning quarterback on that front, but it just, with the environmental issue, I would hate to see it be a situation where we think it's remediated, and then if town hall gets approved, it's a bigger problem than we thought.
Right, so those are actually great questions. And what I can say is we don't know exactly how long the oil has been leaking. We have looked back on older plans, and we are trying to determine if there is they refer to it as a drip pan at the bottom of the elevator. If that drip pan was put in the bottom of the elevator, we believe it has all been contained, and therefore we won't have a need for environmental remediation. As far as the cleanup, we have been advised that you'd want to start mitigating now, only because if we do get approved to build the new town hall, the time delays will be so significant for the remediation, you're better off starting now. And the last part to that is it's really difficult to maintain accessibility to the second floor for the community without an elevator. So currently now we're asking people if they need services on the first floor. We're having people come downstairs to accommodate them, but there's always 1 or 2 per day that decide to take the trip up the stairs, and then it's very difficult for them to get down the stairs. So we just want to be mindful of that. And without knowing if town hall is going to go in December or annual town meeting, it's a little bit of a chess game.
Thank you.
You're muted, Rob.
Can't hear you, Rob.
Sorry about that. I had Mark, then Patrick, then Fran, then Jean is the order I saw people in. So
Thanks, Rob. Just kind of piggybacking on that last discussion. So you said in your opening remarks, we either have to deal with the oil now or when we potentially do a new town hall. And whether it's the fields or buildings, we're in the spirit of not doing things twice, right? Like, is there any reason not to do it now, whether from an environmental perspective or from if we're building a new town hall, it will make that project slightly more delay-free potentially? Like, why would it, I guess my simple question is, why would the environmental remediation not happen now? Apologies for the double negative.
There really is no reason for it not to happen now, because it will minimize delays moving forward. I understand the desire to maybe hold off because they may not be able to remediate all of the areas until the building comes down. So it would kind of be a two-step process, but I think if you start now, you're ahead of the game.
Patrick, then Fran. Patrick? You're muted, or maybe you're in a bad spot. We move on to Fran and when.
No, I'm here. I'm sorry.
Oh, there he is. No, go ahead.
Yeah. I thought I heard you say, Michelle, that the town got estimates both for decommissioning the elevator and also doing repair of the environmental leak and condition and full repair. Do we have a cost idea for a full repair of the estimate to put that elevator back into full service so that the building would be fully accessible or accessible with an elevator in any event?
Sure. So without knowing, of course, the additional cost for remediation, the quote we received to have the elevator fully operational is about $98,000.
Okay, so 65 to decommission, about 100 grand to repair and put it back in service.
Yes.
Plus possible more if there's stuff behind walls and whatnot.
Right.
Okay, thanks.
Sure.
Fran? Yeah, the elevator goes up and down by hydraulic oil power. And there is a sump that a pump is attached to, and that provides the oil pressure to drive the piston up to raise the elevator, and it comes down. So that it has a certain capacity. How often does that elevator get serviced?
So that's actually a great question. So it had been being serviced. We have a service agreement. We had it with one contractor. Unfortunately, they weren't keeping an oil log, so we have no idea how much oil had been put in, therefore how much oil had leaked. We have since contracted with a new elevator company, and they had estimated based on the oil they put in how much could possibly be in the pan, if there is a pan, or in the soils. However, they can't give us an accurate determination because they can only tell what they put in.
What do they reckon?
I think it's up to about 60 gallons.
So, well, that's a fair amount. Yeah, okay. Yeah, normally they do have a drip pan on anything to catch anything like that, incidental leakage, but 60 gallons is quite a bit. And that's based on since those people started taking care of it, or are they just going backwards?
They're going backwards, so that's their estimate.
Well, 60 gallons is a pretty fair amount, so there could be some pretty good saturation in the ground. Now, what has to be done to mitigate it, we got to dig all that dirt out until we get down to clean dirt when there's no oil present. It would seem to me that would be a heck of a lot easier, particularly if the elevator is out of service now. It would be a heck of a lot easier to, when we get good access with the building torn apart, to get in there to do the mitigation rather than trying to squeeze into that elevator shaft now and dig around. I don't know. Again, that would be my observation, but can we live without we lived without an elevator for a whole lot of years. I mean, I still think we got a pretty healthy population. If somebody can't climb the stairs, we'll have someone come down. So
I'm going to want to ask questions about whether or not this turns into an insurance claim. But it's not my turn. So I think I had Jean next, then Mary.
Okay, I have a few things. First of all, how old is the elevator? Because if we're going to put all of this money, spending good money after bad is never a good idea. I kind of work in an industry that deals with abatement, so I can only imagine how much this could cost when we really start digging. The bigger issue, though, is that we're a public building and we're non-ADA compliant. So as a quick fix, maybe we could install a stair lift for people who have trouble with the stairs. It's not a huge cost. We actually did it for somebody at my office who fell and broke her femur. So we rented the stair lift and it worked pretty well. I mean, obviously you can't put 4 people on the stair lift, but if there is somebody who needs to get upstairs, then it's a lot safer than having them try to climb the stairs. Just comments, food for thought.
So I can't answer your question. When the elevator company came to service the elevator, they did let us know it was against its useful life.
Yep, I figured.
Yeah.
Okay, so Mary, I think, is next.
Yeah, my concern is, well, there's a lot of concerns, but in terms of the ADA compliance, and if the town opens itself up to any kind of lawsuit at all, because there's not an elevator that's functional.
So we did consult with legal counsel regarding the issue. And as long as we can provide services to any individual that would normally need the elevator to get to the second floor without having them come to us and ask us for the services on the second floor, as long as we initiate the conversation, then we are still within compliance.
Okay.
I had a couple of questions. One is very close to that. The ADA issue, I've dealt with that, and I think I agree with your conclusion. If there's 60 gallons of oil and we don't even know if there's a drip pan, I don't even like to say this out loud, but like Fran said, I mean, the fix is literally a bunch of guys with shovels digging until the dirt doesn't smell like oil anymore. That's how those abatements are done. And they're expensive, and there's oil migration issues, and is that oil under the, under the pad of basements and other things. I don't know how bad it could be, but somebody probably needs to get their hands around arms around that. Also, if that condition exists, and there's been a release of oil because of a failure of equipment, are there insurance claims? Typically, these kinds of things are within exclusions of insurance policies, and there's a whole lot of strife over in insurance coverage about is it a slow leak or a sudden leak, and what's the language in the policy and everything else. But if there's abatement to be done, and somebody somewhere should figure out whether that's an insured claim if we have the appropriate insurance. That's important. But in terms of summing up where we seem to be at, there's a proposal to release reserve fund money in $60-something thousand to decommission the elevator. But it's not clear to me that the questions from the committee give me confidence that we know exactly what that means, because there's decommissioning the elevator, but I'm confused by the fact that they don't know whether or not there's a drip pan And I'm very concerned that there is a much more than $60,000 problem sitting right under it. Does any of that make sense, Michelle? And
It all makes sense, and I can start with the insurance piece. We did reach out to our insurance company regarding any claims that we may have due to the environmental hazard, if there is one. And they walked us down several different avenues of what could be covered, what couldn't be covered.
by which
and
you mean
without-
dark alleys filled with scary problems, right?
Yeah, so without
Yeah.
knowing, they wouldn't give us an answer. Obviously, the other elevator company that wasn't keeping the logs, that's a whole nother story. So there may be something else there. As far as the mitigation, they won't know until they get in there. The drip pan, they don't know because all of our prior drawings that we have of the elevator doesn't show it, but the year that it was installed suggests that it should be there. So that's a little tricky right there. So they're just looking at our drawings, and by looking at the year, they're saying you should definitely have a drip pan, but the drawings don't show a drip pan. So until they get in there, they won't know.
Mark, I see your hand up, and then Jean,
Even if we have a drip pan, the
then Frank.
probability that it's a 60-gallon drip pan seems unlikely.
That's what I was gonna say.
I'm
So we-
somewhat familiar with the concept of drip pans. They don't hold 60. They're designed to hold a drip, not a flood. And my fear is that this elevator might be like my old 86 Chevy Blazer, in that you put some oil out and some oil came right back out. But they think they're 60 gallons. But this could have just been, if the oil goes in the top end, it comes right back out the bottom. And so no matter how big a drip pan there was, it was overflowing. And boy, 60 seems like as scary as it sounds, 60 seems like an optimistic number. And the idea that this might all be contained in the drip pan seems like very wishful thinking.
One thing I have seen this scenario play out in insurance type cases, and with home heating oil leaks, the companies are very, very able to estimate, but this is a different ballgame. I mean, I suppose some of it is how much oil went into the system and how much was left. I mean, that would probably give you your answer, unless bits of it have been leaking for the last 10 years.
Well, your home heat oil company is charging you for that oil, so they know how much they're putting in. This elevator contract wasn't keeping oil logs, so we have
Exactly.
They were charging us for the service, not the amount of oil used. So we have no
Well,
idea.
I'm sure they were charging us for the amount of oil used. They just weren't writing it down. So I'm sorry, I didn't mean to correct you, but yeah.
No,
absolutely
you're
right.
correct. But I'm just saying we don't have we weren't paying by the gallon. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Or maybe we
so
were.
it's very concerning. Fran, then Mary?
Yeah, do we know where the leak is? Is it the seal around the piston that pushes the elevator car up and down, or is it somewhere else?
I don't have that answer, Fran.
don't
I'm
know.
sorry. I can certainly
Because
find out.
if it's just the seal around the elevator and the machine is shut off, well, then there's no pressure, so it's not going to leak. It is what it is. If there are some of the control valves are leaking, or the pump is leaking, or there's a hole in the sump tank, that's a whole different story. But we need to know where the leak is. And I would say right now, as long as it's secured and there's no pressure in the system, everything will be static unless there's a hole in the sump, because other than that, there's no way for anything else to leak. When the car is all the way down, the cylinder is all the way down. So you're not going to have any seal leakage at that point. I would bet it's a seal around the ramp.
So I just received a text from Nick Berardi, our facilities director, is on. I think he just can't get in, but he just said there's a hole in the jack. Oh, here he is. There's a hole in the jack, and that's where the leak is coming from.
So that's the cylinder that pushes the car up and down. That's not good. All right. So, you're right about the drip pan. It's not made to hold back the whole Atlantic Ocean. It's made to hold back, maybe a gallon or two of oil.
So I've got Mary and Jean, and I promoted Nick. Mary, do you mind if I ask Nick to give us some input?
I think that's wonderful.
Excellent. Nick, hi, thank you for joining
Hi.
us. I
No,
appreciate it.
thanks for having me.
You know, we want to get this right. So if there's anything you've heard that you can shine a little bit of light on, I'm
Yeah,
most interested in, I mean, we have a problem and the reserve fund has money and the reserve fund is meant for certain kinds of problems. But is it is it money that we should be spending, approving today? Can it wait 3 weeks till we know some more facts? You tell us.
I think what everyone's been talking about the unknowns are the issue. So I agree with the fact that the longer we wait, if oil is in the ground, the wider it's going to spread, the greater the mitigation will be in the long run. And then to clarify a little bit about the terms being used. So it's not as much a drip pan as a PVC sleeve that would be around the jack to the piston that goes 30 feet down. So it's not just a little drip pan like you see under a water heater or a washer machine. This is something that could potentially hold that amount of liquid. Obviously, the issue is, like Michelle stated, we can't see those on any plans that we've found. But if it's there, it could hold all this. The other thing is the total amount that could possibly have leaked. It's not like this has been happening for a long time. The reason it was found is because we noticed the oil level dropping. That hadn't been happening before. So we did catch this during our normal preventive maintenance. The previous company wasn't logging how much they had added, but I know that they haven't been doing this for longer than 6 months at most. So we caught it as it started breaking. The thought is that the jack rotted out and that's what's leaking. And as Fran was stating, the elevator is now unpressurized at the bottom, so there is no more allowed to leak out. So that's kind of the overall thing. So we've mitigated it for now. We've stopped the bleeding, but the funds we're asking for now, I think, are important just to get in there and get on what the issue is, in my opinion.
Is the elevator pit accessible? Can you get in and see it?
Yes.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah. And the concern obviously is it's bone dry in there. So the oil is clearly underneath the slab at the base of the elevator.
When you say bone dry, there's no oil on the ground?
No.
Huh. Well,
Mary, then Mark.
Well, this is all way above my skill set right now. I guess my main question is what is the danger of waiting at this point?
I would say the danger of waiting is just the unknown. If there is not a PVC sleeve and it's just going into the ground, depending on what the moisture content of the soil is, it's going to travel faster and further and just create a larger area that would have to be mitigated. And like somebody had stated, the mitigation process can be a nightmare because they just keep digging until there is clean soil.
Mark?
I guess just piggybacking on that, even if the amount of oil is hopefully small and fixed, a fixed quantity of oil at this point, because the system is no longer pressurized, that oil is still moving and spreading, right? Every day, week, month, year, the mitigation gets bigger.
Yeah, I would agree with that statement.
Okay. So
Hey, sorry, Rob, to jump in with a last minute
No.
question here. So
from the desk upstairs.
the ground appears dry, which I just want to make sure I understand what you said, Nick. So the ground appears dry, which leads us to believe that maybe it's already seeped underneath the foundation.
Yeah, so the bottom of the elevator shaft is like any home foundation, all concrete. The piston goes into a jack, which then penetrates through that slab. And that goes 30 feet down. So it's presumed that it's leaking underneath,
Oh,
hopefully into a sleeve, but
And that's a
Makes sense.
poured slab, right? That's not like an old school stone foundation or something.
yeah, it's all 1980s
Okay.
construction, so.
So I mean, as this potentially spreads, if that's happening, it's already under the slab, which is going to require getting through the slab to even start to begin to assess how far it's spread.
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
no, that answers the question.
You're muted, Rob.
Muted, Rob.
Okay, sorry. We have a reserve fund request for a certain amount, a certain scope of work. You know, the question is, I think, is the committee comfortable that that's the best response at this point? I mean, to me, clearly work needs to be done just to find out how bad it is. If it proves to be a bigger problem, it may be a reserve fund problem. It may be a problem that needs money from other sources. Then there's no, but having the cash on hand to react to this might not be a bad idea. I think that's what the issue is. What other folks on the committee think? Fran?
I think at this point, instead of spending a lot of money tearing the machinery apart and digging it out, we need to spend the money to break up the concrete slab and do some digging and find out where the oil is. We're gonna have to take the machine out anyway, if and when we replace it, or if and when we build a new town hall. But at this point, to spend all that money to cut the cylinders all into pieces and taking it out, seems to me that the money needs to go into the mitigation end of it. I agree with the money. We need to spend the money, but I think it needs to be focused on where it needs to go.
See Patrick and then Mike.
Yeah, I think I view this as a situation that came about because the town kicked the can down the road on town hall over and over and over again. And I'm concerned that if we don't spend money right now to decommission the elevator and find out what the extent of the problem is, that it's kicking the can further down the road, and we're just going to get a bigger bill and a bigger bill, because that if there's leakage, it's going to leak into the soil much more so in a plume that exists today. So I'm in favor of using the money in the best way to decommission the elevator and find out the scope of the problem. So I'd be in favor.
Okay, Mike?
Yeah, I mean, I would just say the problem is the prior service company wasn't paying attention to what they were doing and logging how much oil was going into it. I agree with Fran, though. I mean, I think before anything's done, we got to try to understand as best as we can just how pervasive this has become under the slab, and nip that in the bud. Hopefully, it's a bud as quickly as possible.
Mary?
Yeah, just quick question. Does the elevator have to be decommissioned to be able to dig underneath the slab and see what the extent of the damage is there?
Hang on.
Sure.
Yeah, it does. So the process is they have to bring the elevator to the very top floor, secure it there and then
Yeah, so
start
you have
cutting
access.
everything. So yeah,
Okay.
and then at that point, the state requires it to be decommissioned.
Okay, I mean, my inclination would be that that's what you have to do.
I've got to step off for a second.
I don't think this is the last money we're gonna spend on this project, but I think we need to spend it.
Yeah. Just while Rob is out, Michelle, what is your recommendation about what to do here?
So, I mean, I'm on the same page as Nick, and most of you that we
Sorry
should,
about that.
we should decommission the elevator and we should find out
Okay.
to what extent the mitigation we need, if any.
Okay.
Is everyone more or less comfortable with that?
Yes.
Which, so I guess a motion to approve the request as stated and then incorporating the request into the minutes might be the way to go.
Can I actually add one thing real quick about the chairlift, the stair lift thing? I know because we can bring services down to people on the first floor, we're ADA compliant. But what if we have an employee who works on the second floor or something like, are we covering all of our bases here? I agree with the whole elevator discussion, but do we need to also consider the chairlift discussion?
If somebody needs a reasonable accommodation, I'm confident that the town administration can find a way to make a reasonable accommodation consistent with the ADA, right,
Okay.
Chris? Yeah, I mean,
That's what we've been doing. And by the way, your point is well taken, Mark. We've asked that same question, and right now we don't have an issue. And we've talked about every conceivable reconfiguration of services, and there's only so much you can do in the building. That said, we did move tax collection to the first floor for everybody during the peak times. So we didn't have to have somebody going up and down the stairs, and we'll do that again as we need. So it's really the treasure collector is the challenge. And because people come to the assessor too, but that's not as a steady a flow. We've also explored temporary office space, by the way, and we're not having lots of luck there. I mean, there's not a lot of it in town. That said, we're still looking at that too as a worst case scenario if for whatever reason we couldn't make the building continue to work. But that said, what you've been presented with tonight is the necessary, we believe, first step in determining where we go. Hopefully, we'll find out that after this is cleaned up, that this is addressed, that they can just get that there is no problem and we'll move on. I mean, considering the history of this building, I'm not expecting that to be the case. I'm tilting towards a more worst case scenario in my mind. That said, I'd rather be surprised in a pleasant way. So we're here before you for this, and again, we're here on it. As Nick said, this was caught during preventative maintenance. The elevator's been shut down now, and we've been waiting for a proposal. We got the proposal, and we've actually made the request almost as soon as we got the proposal, because we need to move on this. And it's a number we just can't squeeze in anything else. And so this has all happened over the last 6 weeks. This is not I mean, the elevator's been having challenges, but it's reached a crisis point over the last 6 weeks. So we're 8 weeks now because we're 2-week lead time to get to you. So that's where we are tonight.
Mary?
Okay, thanks.
Just in terms of thinking ahead to a motion, if it's $65,000 to decommission the elevator, and then there's an undetermined amount of money that may or may not be needed to start to investigate the mess and then clean up the mess.
Mhm.
So what are we asking for? Are we just going to deal with decommissioning the elevator right now? Because that's finite, at least we know what that is.
Oh, boy.
Fran?
As I recall, reading the proposal, the biggest chunk of the money was to burn the ram off and take it out in big chunks, take all that stuff out. That was the biggest piece of the money. And I think right now we should be able to run that elevator to the top, put some staging, some shoring in it to hold it in place, let the people get in there and where is the controls, the oil sump and the controls? Is that in the pit or is that outside?
The controls and the pump are remote in a room, in an elevator machine room next to the pit.
Next to it, okay.
Yeah, so not in the pit.
Right, so the
Um,
pit would be open. Now we could go ahead and go through the cement and find out exactly what we've got. But to spend a whole lot of money to take that ram and stuff out right now, seems to me that's putting the cart before the horse. The problem is that do we have a whole lot of oil in the ground that's got to be taken care of? Not that we're gonna spend several thousand, tens of thousands of dollars burning up the ram.
The main reason they need to do that though is when they pull the jack out, whether there's a sleeve or not, usually the hole will maintain in place as they pull the sleeve out of the ground. If you disturb the earth next to said hole, it could cave in, and that adds a lot of money. If in the chance that we have to actually fix the elevator properly, then we're adding a lot of money to re-drill a hole that's already there. Because a lot of the time they're able to pull the jack without the hole caving in.
All right, but didn't we just hear that this thing is at the end of its mechanical life?
Well, this is removing all the mechanicals. So they core drill a hole, they put the jack in, piston goes in the jack. So when they remove the old jack, usually they can reuse that same cored hole into the earth. If it's in a sleeve, we're good either way.
Yeah.
But that's the reason that they do it this way.
All right.
Okay. Anything further, questions wise? Somebody want to make a motion and get a second, and then we can have any deliberative discussion we want to have.
Patrick Kennedy moves to allocate $65,000 from the reserve fund for the elevator, town hall elevator decommissioning and remediation proposal.
We have a motion. Do we have a second?
A second.
Franny said, I got Mr. Collins as a second. Any further discussion? Okay, vote by roll call. Gina Stino,
Aye.
Mike Barclay,
Aye.
Fran Collins,
All right,
Patrick Kennedy,
Aye.
Mark Maggi,
All right.
Helen Mar,
Aye.
Mary McGoldrick,
Aye.
Meg Wheeler,
Aye.
Rob Hillman is an aye. The ayes have it. I assume, Chris, that funds will be transferred and that'll all be taken care of. Yes?
Yes.
Great, super. Thanks, Nick. We really appreciate you taking the time this evening to.
Not a problem,
explain
not a problem
everything.
at all.
And thank you, Michelle, also. I think between the two of you and Chris, we got a pretty clear understanding and a lot of questions answered, so. It's also good to have some engineering on the committee. That's what makes us a good committee. We have a lot of different fields, so. Then moving on, most of the rest of our agenda is committee business. We're a little behind, but I think appropriately. I had circulated liaison assignments, and we touched on that a little bit in a couple of prior discussions. With Adam off the committee and Ellen on, we have some blanks, both in terms of what people are doing and what needs to be done. I think we can change these at any point if people are interested. Hang on just a second. But you see, if you have the document in front of you, I think alternative energy, Fran, are you still good with alternative energy? Okay, capital budget, I think it just, given that Mike and I are liaising to the capital group, it makes sense for us to do so with capital budget as well. Mike, do you agree? Okay,
Yeah.
the CPC, I got Meg and Mike. Are you both still interested? Is anyone else interested in CPC?
I'm good with
Um,
staying on.
You're good with it?
I would just say, I mean, given, I'm not sure how much the capital budget stuff is gonna take up my time. I mean, I'm happy to cede my spot on CPC. I just might not be able to keep track of all those meetings and attend those virtually.
I think that makes sense. Why not, Meg, can you go it alone on CPC for now? And if it gets to be a lot, we can get somebody else in there, or if someone else is interested.
Yeah, that works.
Okay, DPW and facilities, Fran and Patrick. I know you both were interested in the past. Still good?
For me,
Patrick?
good for me.
The Harbor Committee, Fran, I assume you're still good with the Harbor Committee. Library and Elder Affairs, Patrick, still
Yep.
work for you?
Yep.
Planning and zoning, there was gonna be an update about planning and zoning. It was either gonna be, I don't think good and bad are the characterizations of it. There's either gonna be an overwhelming amount of work or it wasn't. The planning board had been talking about a substantial overhaul of the zoning bylaws. There was discussion of maybe special town meeting would need a second night just devoted to 12 articles dealing with planning and zoning. And I think it would have been a big lift for anybody to take that on. I think it's also too big a lift for planning and zoning. I actually watched their meetings recently. I do this so you don't have to. These are the services you get with my chairmanship. They are taking, they're taking on a big job and they're approaching it realistically. So I don't think there's going to be anything. And Chris, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think there's anything on the special town meeting warrant in the nature of a zoning bylaw overhaul. And it does appear that they're working with specialists at our town council's office, and it'll be, when it comes, it'll be highly vetted. So Meg, you're down for planning and zoning. Would you mind keeping an eye on them? And if it gets out of hand, let us know, or would you rather somebody else do that?
I would love it if someone, you really sold it there. So I was on the fence anyway, and I'm nervous because January through April are very busy for me at work anyway.
That's right. That's right. And go ahead.
Rob, I'm happy to hop on there because I too watch a lot of those, and because of the developer I live with. So happy to do that.
Thanks, Mary. And I'm happy to pitch in if you can't do one or something, but someone
All
else.
right, I'll leave you. Shall I leave you on with Mary for now?
Sure, as long as Mary understands.
Just take her off. Take her off.
Take her off. Okay.
Take me off, but Mary has a backup if she needs it.
It seems fair. I do think you're going to need a second in the fall, and
it might be Ellen. Ellen has her hand up.
Oh, nice. Ellen, are you interested in?
Sure.
Let me rephrase that. Would you be willing to have your name placed on the planning and zoning line? Excellent.
Sure.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Police and fire, Mike, that's on your plate, but is that something you want to remain on your plate?
Yeah, no, that's I think we need some continuity just with the new fire chief and budgeting and things like that. So I'm happy to stay there.
Okay. If anybody wants to join him with that, let me know. PEB, I've got Mark and Meg. I think that my impression is that PEB is something that's sort of continuing to chug along. So yes, no?
Yeah, it's very much in sort of a maintenance stage. So, I mean, I've been on PEB going back a bunch of years, so I can do that solo if Meg needs some bandwidth. It's not much, but I'm happy to stay, and Meg can stay or not, whatever she feels.
Okay. Meg,
Yeah, I think the only reason I was on that is because I'm an accountant, so I know more about PEB than I want to, but.
So the select board, my name is there. It's really kind of, all of us should be keeping track of what that board is up to, and they make decisions that affect every one of our liaison assignments. So I'll keep my name there. If anybody else wants to, let me know. Water and sewer. That's where Adam's departure has left us short. Is that?
Rob, I'll volunteer for sewer.
Okay. Do I have any takers for the water department? Is that a harder sell? Now, I've always wanted to know how a water company works. I'll put myself down. If anyone else's conscience moves them, they can feel free to ping me about that. But, and the building committee remains Mary and Meg. Obviously, how did the school committee? There's a school committee. We now have a subcommittee. And some combination of capital budget, the budget steering group, which I'll kind of include under capital budget, and the school committee liaison should all be watching the school building. I think it goes without saying, the school building process and the SOI very carefully. All right, I don't think we need a motion for those. They just are what they are. And we have people's agreement in public on tape. So let's see. Issues likely to be raised at special town meeting. Chris, can you give us a really, just a short summary of what you see coming down the tracks? I know it's way early yet.
So September, the date's been set for December 12th. The board set it last week. And the schedule's been released. I think you all should have it. If you don't, I'll ask Tracy to resend it. Basically, the warrant will officially open for citizen petitions on the 13th. It'll close on the 20th. It's only a week for special. A request form has already gone out and went out last week to all the boards and committees and staff for a warrant placeholder. If anyone has anything that needs to be considered, I already have some things back. And so we're gonna take a look at those and vet them and see what's really there. Typically, the core of what happens at a special is moving around, allocating free cash, making any budget adjustments, and just occasionally some other action. There's potentially some action around the harbor, and there's a couple of other tweaks that may be made to some other proposed to some other bylaws. And again, there may be some spending, as you've heard tonight. We have issues still at town hall, and there might be some other things that pop up that might be presented in the special. We'll have a better idea about that over the next couple of weeks. Then the assessment period will be September, October, and the whole thing needs to be wrapped up by the beginning of November for a December 12th meeting. So I don't, as Rob mentioned earlier, I don't expect anything on zoning. I don't think there's enough time to get anything unless there's something housekeeping wise. I don't think there's enough time. I know that the conversations are ongoing, and there'll be some public conversations about zoning issues in the fall, which will probably be more leading up to a spring discussion than a fall one. But there'll be some. There's a plan in development for public conversations about zoning matters. Questions for me about the schedule or anything involving the special?
So my campaign to rename our recurring December meeting something other than special is falling flat again this year.
Well, it's just the way the bylaws read, Mike. So I'm just reading as the bylaws say. Some communities, right? So some communities actually have 2 annuals, right? They just do 2 annuals, right? Cross has never done that. So effectively, there's only been 1 year since I've been here. We haven't done one in the fall, and that was because of the pandemic. So historically, we've done one November, December, typically, just to do financial and catch up stuff. And it's usually a good idea. At least I find. So
I agree. I just thought it was unfortunate that at the December meeting last year, people were referring to the fact that, oh, it's a special town meeting and why are certain things being brought before the town with this special town meeting when it's not special, it's a recurring meeting. And if a committee's done work and they're doing it faster than they expected and it's ready to go in December, it should get the full billing, but that's my,
right.
That's, I'll.
I get, there's nothing to respond to that. That's just, sorry.
I was going to second your motion there, Mike, just for the record. Rob is stuck in the waiting room, Chris.
I saw he disappeared, didn't I? He disappeared on us there. There he is. Hold on, let me bring it back. In conjunction, I guess, kind of, I'll stretch it to town meeting. We have two new members of the finance team. I'm blanking. This is horrible. I'm sorry. I'm blanking. Our new treasurer collector started yesterday. We're very excited. She started yesterday, and our new finance director, which the board approved unanimously last night, is Jennifer Mullen. Jennifer will be joining us from the town of Falmouth, where she's been the finance director. Before that, she was the town accountant finance director in Chatham, and before that, she was in Hanover. I think I have the order right. It was either Chatham, Hanover, Hanover, Chatham. So more than 20 years of experience. She's excited to come to us, and we're excited to have her. She'll be starting on October 3rd. That's the plan. And she'll be doing some transition consulting with us during the month of September as she transitions up here, because Don Pyatt's time, even as a consultant, is winding down pretty much this week. So he'll be available to talk, but not to really do any hard work. So the good news is that we have someone to catch the baton, to catch the torch, to pass the torch to. So I'll be happy to circulate more information about her to all of you. And again, you'll be one of the first groups I'm sure she'll meet with. Again, it's Jennifer Mullen is joining us as our new finance director, town accountant. So we're excited about those two hires.
Well, that's great. It'll be good timing too, right at the end of the summer. Sorry to have disappeared. It's just odd night for bandwidth here. So I don't think we have any minutes to approve that have been circulated. We can take that up at the next meeting. I did want to I think it's a nice touch when somebody leaves a committee to just include in the minutes, vote, thanks and appreciation for their work. So I move that the committee express its thanks and appreciation to Adam Amon for his work in his time as a member of the advisory committee. Anybody want to?
I will second that.
Okay. Let's just vote it by acclamation, and if we violate the OML, then the Attorney General can come and put me in OML jail. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Bye.
All opposed? No. The ayes have it. The topics not reasonably anticipated. I didn't have any. I did not include scheduling our next meeting, but again, I'm just playing fast and loose with the open meeting law and posting requirements tonight. But I think we can probably sneak this one in under the wire. It's the 31st. I think we probably don't have a need to meet until Wednesday, the 21st, if that works for everybody. Anybody see a compelling reason to meet sooner than that? Jane?
That doesn't work for me, unfortunately, but I'm only one person, so. I can
Okay. All right.
But if it moves, that week, we're going away for our family wedding out of state. So we'll be gone Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday that week.
Okay. I mean, we'd always rather meet with you, but it's not like you have a standing conflict on Wednesday nights. It's just that'll happen.
No. We're going to a Thursday night wedding.
I would just ask if it's possible to put on the agenda for that meeting on the 21st, if that's when we have it. If we could schedule our meetings from then through the holidays, that would be helpful. Just looking at the STM schedule.
Yes.
And that would just be helpful.
I think that question will be ripe at that meeting because we'll have a somewhat better sense of what we're looking at for a special town meeting. So absolutely, we'll put that on the agenda. And then when I forget, you can remind me when I send you the draft agenda, but we'll definitely put that on the
And
agenda.
then I know also typically at this time of year, we get a select board message. Or Chris, is that in progress? Is that correct? Or am I
Well, yeah, usually in September, right, that's generated usually now and into September. At the same time, the advisory committee usually makes comments in advance to share with the select board to
Okay,
include
so
the message, so you might want to consider doing that if you'd like to.
yeah, so we need to do that.
So here's what I suggest we do. We always do a budget message in September.
Uh-oh.
We need to get Rob's Wi-Fi settled.
It's after 9 o'clock. You run out of internet.
He can always come down to town hall. We always have a.
You know, you could, if you put the quarters in the meter, then it goes back on.
That's an unfortunate pose he's stuck in there too.
Getting ready to sneeze. Maybe he's gonna sneeze.
You were saying, Mary, I think you're the chair now, so.
Oh, okay, so we do need to put together our budget select. There you are, yay.
Know what's going on here. And I do apologize. I think what I'll do is when I do this, I will find the draft of our budget message from last year. I'll circulate it prior to the meeting. I doubt that our budget priorities have drifted very far from where we were last year, although we may want to focus a little bit on, encouraging the town to move forward with budget priorities in light of these various capital projects that are coming down the pike. And I'll circulate it and we'll talk about it. We'll compile comments and then hopefully be able to approve something straight away. Does that work for everybody?
Great. Yes.
Cool. All right. Anything else? Well, then I would entertain everybody's favorite motion.
To adjourn.
Amen.
Patrick.
9:06.
Let's call it. So we have to do it right. Gina Stino,
Aye.
Mike Barclay,
Aye.
Fran Collins,
Aye.
Patrick Kennedy,
Aye.
who's next? Mark Maggi,
All right.
Ellen Marr,
Aye.
Mary McGoldrick,
Aye.
Meg Wheeler,
Aye.
and Rob Hillman and I. We stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody.